My name is Vinessa Burnett. I'm an artist, a singer, songwriter, musician, originally from South Florida, but I am currently based in Dallas, Texas. My music is influenced from a wide variety of genres, ranging from R&B, pop, rock, alternative, folk, and gospel. And I'm super excited because I'm releasing my debut album, and I'm just so excited to finally put this art form out into the world. And again, thank you so much for reaching out to me. I really, really appreciate it. Um, and yeah, what got me into music? I think it's hard to say when. I feel like music has always been just a part of my life, since I was a kid. My grandpa, he played every single string instrument by ear, so piano, guitar, and whatnot. So I got a lot of exposure in my early years through just watching my grandpa play. And then when I was in, I want to say first grade, I think is when my parents first put me in piano lessons. So that really helped out a lot. And then in fifth grade, I started guitar lessons. I was involved in different choirs through my church, and then in middle school. So it's hard to say exactly when did I start getting into music, but it definitely, through what I just described, has been a core part of my life since I was young. I always have a hard time answering this question about how would I describe my style of music, because it's very varied, and I think once people hear the album, they'll understand what I mean by that. I'm definitely influenced by R&B and pop, and you'll hear some of that in my music. But I also have influences from gospel. I have influences from rock and roll. I have influence from a folk alternative. And so I think that's the beauty of being a singer-songwriter and a musician is you can kind of create whatever sound you want. That takes a little bit of all the different things that you're influenced by. And so, yeah, I would say my sound is kind of a hodgepodge of all of those different genres I just described. So every song on the album I wrote all of the lyrics for. Um, and I also composed a lot of the music for it, at least in the demo form of it. So most of these songs were written originally on the guitar or the piano. And then obviously in the studio recording, you hear a lot more instruments on some of the tracks than just guitar or piano. In that process, in terms of songwriting, I always say I don't write the songs write themselves. I truly believe that um, God gives me these songs, these words, and I'm just writing them out. And so I don't think it's ever a process where I sit down and say, okay, I'm going to write a song today. I think a lot of times when I'm going through things or feeling certain emotions, I will just get like a download of words in my brain, and it'll stop me in my tracks. So I'll have to write it down. And so I think that that's one way that songwriting happens, right? Like it just comes to you and you have no choice but to sit down and write it out. Other times, I think I'll just catch myself in the moment being inspired by something, whether it's a scene that I'm observing in front of me, nature. I think I'm very inspired whenever I'm sitting in nature, but it's definitely not like a forceful process. It is something that it comes and goes, and you can't really force it. You just kind of have to yield to it when it comes. Great. How did I choose the title Prime? Um, where to begin with that one? I think um, there's a lot of pressure for young adults, especially women in our 20s and late 20s in particular, on what that ought to look like or feel like or be like. And there's this notion that like our 20s are the prime of our life. And I think while going through this album, while writing some of the songs on the album, including there's a song called Prime that is on the album, I started to think a lot about what it meant to be in the prime of my life, feeling like I was aging out of it. And I think the overall conclusion that I came to is that we can always be in the prime of our life. It's not confined to a certain age or time period. Um, but really our entire life is the prime of our life, because every day we wake up and we make choices that either get us closer to where we want to go or closer to who we want to be, or take us further away from that. And so each day that we're choosing to be true to ourselves, go after the things that excite us, and set our hearts on fire. That is to me what prime really is. It is that, and it's also just the general like human experience. And so I think that as listeners hear the album, they'll get a deeper sense of what I mean by what it means and feels like to be in that prime state. Yeah, to be honest, that is a question I'm like still asking myself now that the project's a few days away from being released. I look back at the past year and I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I have the time to do this? I really don't know. A lot of sleepless nights. I have been chronically sleep deprived for the past year. Not just from working on the album, but I think when you're in this creative flow or creative state, your brain is just constantly buzzing with ideas. And for me, that creative sweet spot tends to be like late at night, or in the middle of the night. So I often find myself waking up with ideas. But I think just making it a priority, being consistent. In my day job, I do a lot of program and project management, and I was able to apply that to this process of making the album. So, and my producer can tell you, I had like a, a Word document that I shared with him on Google Docs in the beginning, that outlined in a table. Here's my songs. Here's my lyrics. Here's the chords for each song, and I had like due dates and milestones for when I wanted certain things to be completed by, and just constantly keeping us on track. I made it a priority to get in the studio at least once a week. Um, and so again, having that forethought to plan out, okay, well, what days am I going to be in the studio? Does this work for his schedule? And so I think I became very good at proactively managing my time and having an actual like project plan for this album, which helped keep me on track. And then the best part about creative projects is the only deadline is the deadline you give yourself. And so once it became clear that we were getting closer to finishing the project, that's when I was like, okay, now we can put a deadline on when this album will release. But up until then, I was really just having fun and going through the process, which I think can also help with that work-life balance, knowing that whether I release it next week or 2 years from now, like no one's gonna know what the original goal date was. It's up to me. And anytime I had those roadblocks, I gave myself grace, right? There were weeks that I didn't go into the studio because I was traveling or I was overwhelmed. And I honestly think those breaks were super helpful, because by the time I did get back into the studio, I had this like refreshed perspective on the songs. It was like hearing them for the first time again, which I think also helped with getting even more creative and getting more ideas flowing on the project. And I think success is relative, right? It's what you define it as. For me, it's very important before I leave this earth to feel like I've used up every ounce of talent and gift and impact that God has placed on the inside of me. Because I truly believe that that's what we're on this earth to do. And you get to a point where it's harder to keep it in than it is to just let it out, right? And that's with any creative pursuit. And so when you get to a point where you're constantly thinking about it, I would catch myself singing my songs in public, without even realizing that I'm like singing at the top of my lungs in a public restroom, right? So you get to a point where it's just like it's just coming and it's oozing out of you. And so I think that's when you know, okay, like there's something in here that I need to let out, right? And do it to the fullest, so that way there's no stone unturned. In my case, right now, in this season of life, it happens to be music. Who knows what it'll be in another season of life? Um, but I think that's why it's so important. Outside of the success I've had in my traditional 9 to 5, I know that I have gifts and talents that aren't being reflected in my 9 to 5, and I would hate to squander it by not really pursuing it to the fullest. I think you're referring to the Golden Girl video. My best friend since high school, Rebecca, who I think you're actually familiar with as well. She directed that and helped come up with the vision for it. And I'm so grateful for her. And several of my friends, or all my friends, starred in the music video for it as well. They were my golden girls. And yeah, I think that's one of the fun parts about being a musician, particularly an independent musician that is just getting started, is that I get to rely on my friends a lot for pretty much every aspect of making the album, which they willingly agree to. And I think it's so fun because it's nice to be able to look back and say I didn't just do this by myself. I had a village of people that I really care about that helped me and supported me. And the same is true for this album. So several of my friends actually sang background vocals on two of the songs on this album. So shout out to Neka, Ugo, David, and Kelvin if you're watching this. I'm so grateful for you all. And so yeah, I think just it's important to me that my friends are really brought along the journey with me because they, in many ways, they help inspire my songs. They're the first people to comment and like all my Instagram posts and hype me up and be a listening ear when I'm feeling discouraged or doubtful about my ability to do this. And so any chance I get, I am looking to have my friends be on board. Ooh, that is a deep one. What makes an artist an artist? I think anyone who dares to create whatever dream or idea is in their heart or in their head, whatever that might be, whatever art form it might be. But I think it's that willingness, that bravery to attempt to put something into some sort of tangible form. And really that, being able to take it from like I said, an idea, a dream, and figure out a way to make it a reality. That is what makes an artist an artist. I think so. For the longest time, I didn't really consider myself an artist. I didn't consider myself creative. Barely considered myself a singer or a musician. And I think part of that is imposter syndrome. And, I think artists tend to compare themselves to other artists. But as I am almost, about to release this album, I definitely can say that, right? At one point, this album, Prime, was literally just a dream, like just me talking out the side of my mouth. And it still feels like not real. I think it'll hit me on Tuesday when the album actually releases. But yeah, I took a dream, I took an idea that was in my heart, and soon it will be a reality for other people to listen to. Oh, absolutely. I catch myself listening to my songs all the time, which feels kind of vain, but I think to me, especially with certain songs, like knowing the state of mind that I was in, and I don't know, these songs have such personal meaning and connection to me, that it does bring me joy to be able to reflect on what that songwriting process was like, what it was like recording it in the studio, and just to see the progress that I've made from whatever emotions I was going through when I wrote that song to where I'm at now. It very much is a full circle moment that it brings me joy because it's like, wow, like I created this, I channeled whatever emotion I was experiencing into a, healthy art form, that now other people will get a window inside of, to see, a little bit more into what was going on in my mind. So it does bring me a lot of joy. One, please go stream and listen to the album when it comes out. And I think, yeah, the future is still to be written. I'm still figuring out what this identity looks like as a musician, as an artist. And so hopefully it means performing more. I would love to perform locally, some of these songs that I've written and get to do them in front of a crowd. I think that would be fun. I also would like some rest. So for the next couple months, hopefully I get some downtime to kind of relax and soak in now that the album will be out. But for sure, this won't be the last project I work on. I'm sure of that. This won't, there will be more songs and music to make. But for right now, just resting and maybe performing some of the songs. My name is Vinessa Burnett, and I am an artist, and my art can be listened to anywhere that you get your music. specifically with my debut album Prime.